What's happening, everyone? My partner's Ian's keeping it real. What's happening, everyone, and welcome to El Chile Boxing Talk. We're doing a prime time episode here in the evening to do a little bit of a makeup for the fact that we missed Tuesday's episode, but we're here, man. I got George with Off the Ropes Boxing and MMA. Got the homie Nopal Boxeanos in the house. Nopal, dude, I noticed you changed your thumbnail. What's going on with that, man?
Man, I had a lot of haters trying to say I looked like like I didn't look like my usual self, so I just changed it up. Back to my gangster self, man.
Oh,
well, hey, man, that's all right. And, I'm glad that you got your Mexican flag because we're going to get into it, man. This is wasn't by design, man, but we got 4 Mexicans here. We got Dave from the Shoe Shine in the house, dude. Thank you so much for joining us, brother. And then we miss our brothers, Sean and Run PMC. They couldn't make it, but man, we have them in mind. And we also got some scorecards that we're going to read off from Run PMC here in a little bit. But, dude, I want to get into it, dude. Like, this has kind of become like a little bit of a relevant subject. So we're going to get into it. We're going to discuss who is the potential torchbearer after Canelo, or who could be Canelo's rival. Now, we all know right now that Canelo's been the one that's been taking care of business. 3-time world champ here. We all know what he did at 168. We know what he did at 175, right? He kind of snagged the belt, but I mean, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind who the torchbearer of Mexican boxing is. And he's the best Mexican middleweight we've ever had, best Mexican super middleweight we've ever had, best Mexican light heavyweight we've ever had. Okay, a little bit of that is by default, right? Because, we're a small people. So, but Canelo's a bit of a trendsetter. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the other dudes, man. We're going to take a look at the other dudes and see who could possibly rival Canelo. Because, hey, they're all campaigning around the same weight class at the same time. So I'd love to get into it. Let's start off with skill set. I really want to know what you guys think about their particular skill sets. Dave, let's start with you, man. I'd love to hear what you have to say. So you see it, man. We got Munguia, David Benavidez, and Jose Ramirez. And just for some reference, in their respective weight classes, David Benavidez is ranked number 1. The actual champion of that division is Canelo, of course. Gilberto Ramirez, Zurdo, is ranked number 5 at light heavyweight, and Jaime Munguia is ranked number 4 at middleweight currently, all according to Ring Magazine. So what do you think, Dave?
now you said skill set or fundamentals?
Hey, you know what? Great point. Let's go with the whole thing. Skill set, fundamentals, like the skill in the ring. Yeah.
So I have for fundamentals, this one gave me a lot of trouble, to be honest with you guys, because I can separate skill set from someone who's an exciting fighter. So you guys are probably going to hate me for this one, but the best fundamentals, I think, are going to go with Ramirez, which makes him such an unappealing, boring fighter to so many people. He does almost everything very, very well, but it's not enough to launch him into superstardom. So that's my problem with him. I think he has the most sound fundamentals of the group. It does not make him the most popular. And it doesn't, you have 3 things we're going to judge on here. So I'm going to go with fundamentals. I'm just going to say Ramirez.
All right. And so you think he has better, I'd love to have you elaborate a little bit. So you think he has better fundamentals than Munguia as well as Benavidez. So you think he's just got he's just more well-rounded in your opinion, huh?
Yeah, to me, he's more well-rounded overall, but that doesn't mean he has the most exciting offense at all, because that's where David Benavidez and Jaime Munguia supersede him.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dave. And Nopal, what do you think, brother?
Gilberto Ramirez all the way. I was going to say Gilberto. No, all the way, man. He hits from awkward angles. He's in there, bro. And he knows how to use his height. There's so many things to his skill set, and I wouldn't say he's your typical boring fighter. I kind of like his style a little bit more, and unfortunately, we haven't seen a lot from him. He had a couple snags in his career, but I think that potentially he has the biggest chance to dethrone Canelo out of the 3.
Dang. Well, please, George, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm okay. Yeah, I would say right now, yes. I would agree with you guys. I would say Ramirez overall, in the front runner, but again, not saying that he will beat Canelo, but if you look at Munguia's last couple fights, you can see there was some improvement, but you really can't base the last fight because you really can't say that he was any kind of threat. He looked more composed. He looked like a better boxer in his last fight, and that's, I feel like, only because Ballard wasn't really too much of a threat. So even if Ballard landed some shots, there was no urgency. So he was comfortable. He looked pretty good. But I think I would agree with these guys. I would say Ramirez, being southpaw, he throws a really good jab. In his last outing, I feel like maybe he was just showcasing a little bit, trying to give the crowd a little something to show off. Say, hey, you know what? I could take some shots too from Yaniski. But I would agree. I would say Ramirez. I'm saying Ramirez with this one.
All right, dude. I want to give a shout out to everybody who's joined us. JC, first in the house as always. Welcome, man. Sonteo, we got JC, and then Boxing Republic. Thank you, Nancy, for joining us. Yeah, no, I mean, those are some great observations. And Dave, I gotta say, man, I totally agree with you. As far as like style goes, like Ramirez isn't the best as far as like entertainment, but he's very solid at what he does. But I gotta give a little bit of credit to Jaime Munguia. I think his skill set's evolved, and I see a lot of similarities. Like I think that their punch selection is pretty similar. I think they're both very good at the head movement. I'd have to say though, I do think that Gilberto Ramirez is a little bit better on the inside. Gilberto Ramirez Udro, he's so good at just fighting long range and then coming in, hitting the body, also doing that phone booth type fighting. But I think that Jaime Munguia, his defense is getting better, although I think they both have pretty good head movement. I did a poll on Twitter, and Gilberto Ramirez was the clear favorite. Second was Munguia, and then third was David Benavidez. And, I felt like David Benavidez, pobrecito, he didn't get any love, you know what I mean? But, I know that David Benavidez and Ramirez, they sparred, and I know that Benavidez made reference to the fact that Ramirez was pivoting all over the place. And so he definitely respects Ramirez's footwork. And I'd have to say that he probably has the best footwork of the three. Although, I also am keeping in mind, too, that Gilberto Ramirez is 30 and Munguia is only 25. So Munguia still has time to improve. And there's also some other considerations I want to make as well. So I want to know what you guys think about the way these guys are being moved, because all we can do is assess these people, right? Based on the fights that they've had, based on the competition that they've had. So I want to know about what you all think about their path currently. What do you think about the path of all three of these people? I want your overall opinions. Please feel free to give it to me. George, what do you think?
Okay. Ramirez, I would say out of the three, I feel like he's had the better competition, and he shows that he's showed that he can actually compete at that level. Munguia, I would say maybe one of his best wins was Saddam Ali and Gabriel Salvo, just off head, just thinking. But I guess as far as them being moved, Munguia's 25, correct? Is he 25? Okay,
That's
yeah,
right.
he's 25. Yeah. So
25.
I feel he's being moved a lot better now, just because maybe there wasn't too much confidence in seeing him move up. You see, like I said, in the last fight, you see improvements. You see a better selection of punches. He looked more patient. Benavidez, I mean, I know he's asking for the fights. We don't know what the holdup is. Is it because of PBC? I mean, we go back to the whole PBC thing. But his next fight is David Lemieux, so I would say maybe that is probably his biggest will be his biggest step up right now. But Ramirez, I feel like he's beaten all the guys that they put in front of him, and names too. So I think it was Yuniski Gonzalez, correct, that he beat, and also oh my God, I'm drawing a blank right now. But I again, like I said, I know he's had the better competition out of the guys. I really don't think that they're moving Munguia bad. I think they just want to, put some more wins under his belt and see the improvements where they need to be seen. So I would say, yeah.
Very nice. Dave, what do you think, man?
First of all, Monday night on the Showdown, I was very, very harsh on Oscar De La Hoya, and I wasn't taking into consideration how young Jaime Munguia is. Really, you made a very valid point that he's 25, and I'm going to just go ahead and jump the gun. I think he has the room to go the furthest in his career because he's already established himself as a world champion. Yes, David Benavidez has too, but if you look at Jaime Munguia's overall physique, and you saw the issues he had making weight last week, you know that he's already struggling to make middleweight. So it's not very far from when he gets his title shot at 160 that he'll be moving on up to 168 and potentially also being a world champion someday at 168 pounds. Canelo Alvarez is what, 30 as well, early 30s. And Jaime Munguia could be in his shoes fighting for world titles at 168 pounds in a matter of 5 years. That's not a long time away. So I wasn't taking into consideration Oscar De La Hoya probably has a master plan on why he's taking so much time with Jaime and developing him. And maybe it was a double-edged sword that Jaime won his titles so early in his career, like David Benavidez, who also won his titles very early in his career.
Nopal, what do you think, homie?
Man, I'm going to start off the bat with Munguia. I actually appreciate the way they're moving him along. A lot of people are like getting restless and, getting mad because they're taking a while, and they're questioning whether Munguia, is scared to move up, and that simply isn't even the case, because if you go back, we didn't even know who this guy is, but Triple G was trying to get a fight with him, when the guy had barely moved up from like 154 or welterweight still. So as far as being scared, he's not scared. And we've been able to see his slow development, but for sure it's come along. We see him using some defensive moves, moving his head. We saw in this fight, I saw some stuff that I didn't ever see him, do. Basically, he's just been a come forward fighter most of the time, but this time he showed a little bit of patience, and then he waited till the opportunity arose, and then he went in and capitalized on it. So as far as the way they're moving him, I think that, we get a little ahead of ourselves sometimes when it comes to the Mexican fighters. We just want them to fight everybody. And the case with this is Golden Boy doesn't have enough Mexican fighters to just let them take those risky shots right away. So we should be able to understand that a bit. As far as Gilberto Ramirez, at first, I think that he didn't have the opportunity to, have those good fights at the beginning because, he was with Bob Arum and, but he did, he out of the three, he probably has the best resume or whatever. And it's probably better that he didn't sign with Golden Boy till now. So, we'll see what comes along of his career. And then with, I'm like, who's the other guy? With David Benavidez, it's kind of hard. I think it's a difficult situation because we know the way that they move fighters on the PBC. It's like, he's just going to fight the same level of competition. I don't even consider Lemieux that good of a fighter anymore. So I think that's going to be a super easy fight for him. And that's all he's going to fight, those type of opponents till he get his big shot at a pay-per-view, with probably Canelo. So, that's what I think.
Well, Nopal, I got to say, man, I agree with you on a lot of those things, dude. As far as the way David Benavidez is being moved, like, I'd have to say, like, it's kind of interesting to me. Like, he's very talented and he's still very young. He's only 24 years old, I think. And he's already been a champion twice. And he obviously lacks discipline, but his opposition hasn't been that bad. I think it could stand to be a little bit better in general. I don't think all of that is his fault necessarily. I do think that David Lemieux is kind of a poor pick, especially coming off of his last fight where he fought a blown up middleweight at a catch weight. Like I didn't care for that too much, and I want to back Benavidez, man. I like him. I feel like his fan base is, I don't know. Like I feel like it needs to be revolutionized a little bit. Like not that it's like a tough love kind of thing, but I feel like David Benavidez, I don't know. I feel like he has to earn the respect of some people back a little bit. I think he's got a good skill set. The other thing too is he's fighting in the same weight class as Canelo. So I actually like what he has to say when he says, hey, like, what am I supposed to idolize this guy? Like, I'm trying to fight him. I'm trying to become a champion. So, I'm trying to give him his respect, but I can't sit there and act like he's the man, even though maybe he is the man currently. And I did like what David Benavidez had to say. People were giving him a lot of crap about saying, okay, well, I'll fight Canelo for less, but I want good money for Andrade, right? I did think it was a little weird that he wanted good money for Andrade. But I understood the concept of taking the Canelo fight for less money because I've always said, on top of like the highest pay that you're going to get, you're also going to get this huge legacy fight. Like Canelo just continues to add to his legacy. He does more than all these dudes. Most dudes in boxing, he just continues to add year after year. So it's just a huge legacy win if you beat him. And he's the undisputed super middleweight champion. So I like that he's just kind of hanging out and waiting. And I don't know how long he can hang out at this weight class. To me, he's a big dude, and he's had trouble making weight before multiple times. So we'll see how that goes. But, I got to say, like, as far as Zudo Ramirez, he's kind of newer on my radar, and he shouldn't be. I mean, he was a super middleweight champion, and this was back in the day during the third Pacquiao versus Bradley undercard. That's when he beat Arthur Abraham to become a champion. So, I mean, and it's like he's kind of on my radar now. It's like he kind of fought his way into obscurity again. Like when I look at his resume, I don't see many people there, and the dude's already 30. He's already 30 years old, and he's still fighting no names, in my opinion, and he really doesn't have that much of a buzz. And 40 fights, like, if I'm being consistent with fighters that go around fighting people that don't have a name, like, to me, I'd have to say that, like, I think Ramirez needs to pick it up a little bit. I don't know if that's necessarily his fault. He's in the top 10 of the light heavyweight division. So hopefully he'll get those big fights soon. I know a lot of people like his coach and what they're doing. So I'm excited to see what he does next, and I just want everybody to know that I actually like all these dudes. Just because I recognize the greatness of Saul Canelo Alvarez doesn't mean that I don't like these other dudes. I like talent from wherever it comes, and I happen to always prefer Mexican boxers, but since we're just talking about Mexican boxers, I got to say that I do like all three of them. I'm kind of hard on David Benavidez, but that's because I feel like, he's been getting a pass for things. I don't want like this. I don't know. I don't want to call it like a bad reputation, but like I said, I think that his fan base could do with like a revamp. I think his image could do with a little bit of a revamp, but he has time, and I like Jaime Munguia, man. I think that he's being moved very well. He's already been a champion. And I think he's probably got, in my opinion, the best resume. He's been on my radar the longest. I've seen more improvements from him than anybody else. And I think he's at the right age to just kind of navigate this career very well. Like, he's kind of at that right age where he can just kind of take everything at middleweight. If Charlo moves up, if Gennady Golovkin retires or moves up, like, it's open for him. Like, he could just sit there and dominate until he moves up. Will he have weight problems? I mean, I'm not sure, but I really like the way that he's moving. And before we move on to which one of these guys could possibly dethrone Canelo, does anybody have any final thoughts on the path of these particular fighters?
Can I just say, I'm sorry,
Yeah, man.
Can I just say that it took me a while. It took me a few days. And I just want to give a shout out to Nopal for saying something that was on my mind that came around. That finally is on my mind now. And I think that it's not that Jaime Munguia is scared of his opposition. It's Oscar that's scared. Oscar is scared of losing another top talent in his roster. His roster is kind of small. And it seems like the minute a fighter loses a high profile fight, he basically dumps him from a promotional contract. So that's why he's moving so slowly with Jaime Munguia. I don't think it's Jaime that's scared at all. I think it's Oscar. After Canelo walked from him, he's scared of losing another star.
Yeah. And, between the three, I think they're all good in their own way, in their own, I guess their own zone or their own individual. So, to begin with, it's kind of hard to really say, I rather pick this guy, that guy. Cause again, you do see Munguia 25 and I agree too. I think De La Hoya doesn't want to lose another guy. I mean, I think the other guy he has now is Virgil Ortiz, right? Is Virgil Ortiz another Golden Boy fighter? So you got two good Mexican fighters there. And just watching Munguia's last fight, like I said, you can definitely see that there was improvement, and he's got a good coach in his corner. He's got Eric Morales. So I agree, man. It is hard to try to pick and choose between the guys. I think each guy has his own individual attributes that are really what he does really well. But I think that's pretty much what I want to say about that.
Well said, Georgie. Bros, I just wanted to say that with Benavidez, I'd actually like to see him take a page out of the all-time greats playbook and step out of his comfort level a little, and you know what I mean? Move the promoter to the side a little bit and tell the promoter, I want these fights right here. You know what I mean? And I don't need you to speak for me. I don't need you to tell people that I need more money for Andrade, but that I'll take less for Canelo. Because you know how ironic that sounds for the promoter to be saying something so stupid? How dumb he made Benavidez look?
Oh, yeah. Well, so Theo Mead is dropping some knowledge here. He says, I wouldn't look too deep on how Munguia looked after the weigh-in. He went live on Instagram leaving the venue and said he was fine. Literally minutes after the viral videos of him laying down. Yeah, dude, people were going nuts over that. I could see it being a little claustrophobic. Like, I mean, there's just a bunch of people breathing around you, you probably just want your space, but he had a siesta in the middle of the whole weigh-in room, and people were all swarming him, all concerned. They had to fan him off. And so Theo also says that, hey, Dave, Golden Boy shares the promotion of Munguia with Fernando Beltran Zanfer, and they got that dude locked in. He ain't going anywhere. All right, man. Well, hey, dude, I want to ask this next question, and this is probably the most important one because, hey, they're all fighting in the same era. I want to know which Mexican fighter, if any, can dethrone Canelo. George, let's start with you, man. Let's see what you have to say, man, brother.
It's a tough one to answer because right now none of them really. Right now, maybe when we see the superstar or the great fighter pass on the torch, it's usually later on in his career, and I think that'd be the time when Canelo's ready to either pass it on or someone take it from him. It's hard to really say how any of these guys' career is going to go 8 years from now, 5 years from now. And Ramirez is running out of time a little bit. I mean, I know he's a little bit younger than Canelo, but I feel like if it's going to happen, it's got to happen in the next few years. But I just don't see any of them dethroning Canelo right now. So maybe in the future, if it happens in the future, if I see a better improvement in Benavidez as far as footwork, a little bit of defense, he's a little flat-footed, and you don't want to be flat-footed against Canelo. So for me, it's a hard one to really choose on this one. But if I have to choose and I randomly have to pick, I mean, I'm probably going to get a lot of shit for this, but hey, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I would say Munguia. He's the youngest one right now. We see the boxing. Again, morale is in his corner, so I would pick Munguia.
All right, one for Munguia, possibly, although probably ain't going to happen. George, thank you very much. Dave, what do you think about this, man? Who has the best shot of dethroning Canelo?
Yeah, that's a tough question too, because see, using the word dethrone, first of all, I don't think any of these guys will eventually become the cash cow or the face of boxing as Canelo or Floyd Mayweather have done in the past. None of these three people have the total package that Canelo or Floyd Mayweather before him have. Now, interestingly enough, I think that if you put any of these three guys today in the ring with him, I actually think Zurdo Ramirez has the best chances of beating Canelo Alvarez in the current present time. He's got the height, size advantage, the strength, a solid chin. I think Zurdo Ramirez gives him the best fight of the three. But as far as career trajectory, the guy here who has the most chance of being a 3-division weight champion, I'm going with Jaime Munguia. I see a path for him to win the middleweight title and eventually win the super middleweight title. At that point, Canelo's going to be what? Could be 35, late 30s, could be like Gennady Golovkin age, maybe, who knows? And maybe we could have a fight between Munguia eventually and Canelo Alvarez, and we'll see how those two fighters are at their stages. It won't be peak on peak, right? It won't be Jaime Munguia might be in his peak, but Canelo will be slowing down. But none of these guys will eventually dethrone Canelo as the face of boxing.
Damn, Munguia.
That's a good point. You're absolutely right. Yeah, those are big shoes to fill.
Dude, they absolutely are, man. And George, I gotta say, man, I completely agree with what you had to say. That's pretty much how I would answer it. Actually, same as Dave too. And now we're gonna see if it's a clean sweep. Nopal, what do you think, man? Does anybody have a shot besides Jaime Munguia, or what are your thoughts?
Like basically word for word what Dave just said. I think that the one that presently has the best chance is Zurdo. Like I said earlier, he pivots, angles, length. I think even in his last fight, I got a freaking I remember him grabbing Uneski and hitting him on the side just the same way Whitaker was hitting Chavez Senior. And I think that he's got the best shot, and eventually Munguia is going to just keep improving. If they keep moving them along correctly. I mean, they're probably going to step up his competition, but just slowly till they think he's ready for all the big dogs.
Dang. Well, there you go, man. Well, let's see. Let's go to our next subject. I don't know if I know that Dave has to leave probably right around the top of the hour, so we'll see if he jumps back in. He might have a battery issue, it looks like. But dude, we're gonna get into this. I don't know if you guys all saw on Twitter. You probably did, but there was a big drama show going on Twitter. A little bit of beef between Andre Ward and Triple G, and let's read the tweets. So it looks like Andre Ward was asked a question about, is there a fight that you wanted that didn't happen before you retired? And he mentioned something about Golovkin. He said, but he turned it down in less than 5 minutes. So Andre said that, and then Gennady Golovkin responded with this. He says, Andre, stop lying to the fans. Your team made the offer after I announced the fight with Lemieux and sold out MSG. You are still angry since you never sold tickets like me. HBO knew you used the offer to for publicity to move to 175. Happy birthday. And Andre responded with saying that he has receipts to stop playing, right? And then Tom Loeffler jumped in and he says, Andre, you've had a great career. I see it still bothers you that you fight with a broken that a fighter with broken English is way more successful in the USA than you are as a gold medalist. You should release the emails about the offer and my response to your team. #facts. Damn. Well, Dave, I know you got to get rolling, man. So I'd love to give you this one and see what you think about this in particular, bro. What were your thoughts about all this Twitter beef going on here?
I love it, man. Sometimes I feel like, and by the way, I apologize, my camera battery did die. Sometimes I feel like the best beefs on Twitter between boxers come in the middle of the week, you know what I'm saying? And it happened again today. We hit some gold mine on this one. First of all, Gennady Golovkin, we're all waiting for the return of him versus Ryota Murata in Japan, seeing what Triple G Gennady Golovkin still has left. And on the other hand, a lot of people who are fond of Andre Ward think he left the sport way too early. And this is exactly what we need to drag Andre Ward out of retirement. I think it was a very early retirement into commentary land. I'd love to see Andre Ward get back in there and give it a go one more time against somebody like Gennady Golovkin. Why not? At the age, they're both age appropriate. My only thing is I know Andre Ward will demand a tune-up fight or two, as he usually does.
And ain't that the truth?
And with that said, guys, I'm going to tune in, but I got to run. I appreciate everyone so much on the HCP network. I'll just drop a link to my show. Feel free to check it out later on. Don't click on it now. Stay on here with Al Chile. And I'll see you guys next Monday on the Showdown. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot,
right,
man.
Dave. Thanks very much, man. Always good having you. You too.
All right, Dave.
All right. What do you think about all this, George?
It's crazy. I remember it a little bit. I remember, of course, at the time, everybody was demanding the Andre Ward, Triple G. I mean, Tom Loeffler just dropped the bomb because, everybody wants receipts in 2022. If you're going to come with facts, they want the receipts. Tom Loeffler said, release those emails, please. Release the emails of me, of the contract or whatever. It would be, I agree with Dave. Yes, I think all of us agree that Andre Ward did retire a little early. I think that would have been an excellent going out retirement fight between him and Triple G. And, Triple G, obviously, at the time, HBO, he was one of the top sellers for HBO. This would make a lot of money. And, the fans, they love Triple G. All colors, all walks, love Triple G. And of course, you have a good majority of the Mexican fans loving Triple G, with his Mexican style. But I agree, Kenny. Yeah, Ward talks way too much. It was funny. I did see it earlier at work, but I didn't really get to look into it until right now when you just put it up on the screen. But yeah, man, I don't know if it's. I guess you're seeing it, right? The OGs are, with a little sour taste in their mouth with some of these guys still that are still in the game, that are still making a splash. I don't know if that was a shot at Triple G or if that's maybe an indication, like wrestling, like I'm gonna tap you on the shoulder before you slam me. So maybe he's tapping him on the shoulder to let him know, like, hey, you know what? Maybe there's a possibility that I could come back for one more. But who knows, man? It was pretty funny to see, man.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Brian, boxing historian. What's good, brother? What's happening with you, man? And then knocked out by Kenny. Thanks, man. And he says, shut Andre Ward and his lying ass the fuck down. Damn. Ward talks too much. Needs to be more humble. And Hard Time says, Triple G is older than Ward, which is a great point, but Ward ain't coming back for any amount of money. Ward's entire legacy is based on him keeping his O, and he won't risk losing it for anything. Well, that's one way to look at it, man, for sure. And then Kenny chimes in here and he says, Andre Ward retired early and ducked everybody. He was afraid to fight anyone after Kovalev whipped him twice. He got dropped, and then he dropped his career. Damn. No mercy, man. Nopal, what do you think about all this, man? These old men are bickering on Twitter. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, man. This is one of them subjects where, if you go back, people are very passionate about this discussion right here. And, if you go back, this was a big argument, between two sides, of the boxing community. You know what I mean? This was a big argument. And back then, I always, the biggest thing for me was that video where Triple G, they asked him in 2013 when he was still 33 years old, and he had plenty of age to show some interest in his fight. But on that video, they asked him if he was interested in facing Ward. And he basically said flat out, he goes, no, Ward is too much for me. And keep in mind that he was 33 years old. He was already in his prime, probably the best years in his boxing career around that time. And if you go back and look at the timeline, which that's one of the things that I've learned, when people say this guy ducked this guy, I learned to kind of like look at little videos here and there, and then start looking at articles and match the dates up with the timelines and then put together both of these guys' careers and what fights they had around that time. So I think in 2013, Ward wasn't even fighting around that time because he had issues with this promoter. And so, that kind of leads you to believe that the fight wasn't even possible anyways. But nevertheless, you still got Triple G having no interest in this fight. And then once they get into it, because I think what ended up sparking this all together was Abel Sanchez was using Ward as an example, like they, because he was being asked by all these big channels, Dante's Boxing and all these guys, if they had interest in that, and Abel Sanchez was saying that Triple G would beat him easily, and so that's what got Ward into it, and then Ward got into it and he wanted to fight Triple G, I guess. But again, if you go back to the timeline, I think he wasn't even in a position to take that fight. So, long story short, my opinion on this situation, I used to think that Triple G ducked that fight. But fast forward to right now, knowing how Ward was and how much of a diva he was, he had to have everything in his advantage whenever he took a fight. A lot of the tuna fights that he took before taking his big fights, his opponents were paid trash money. He had a fight in his hometown most of the time. Like I said, fast forward to right now and everything I know about the whole situation, I believe that they both didn't really have an interest in fighting each other, and I think that they were both using each other for publicity. And like I like to say, I think they were both barking behind a very secure fence.
All right. I want to give a shout out to El Capitan. D-Style Boxing's in the house with us. Thanks for joining us, man. He says Andre Ward would have easily outboxed Triple G. And Brian's inclined to agree. And then Brian also says that he would have outboxed Canelo Alvarez too. Dang, Brian, we're just trying to have a good time, enjoy ourselves. You gotta go trolling us like that. Nah, I'm just kidding. But you know what? Brian hasn't really trolled the Canelo fans in a good while, from what I can remember. Usually he's really good at saying stuff, so I'm gonna give him a pass on that one. Plus, he's my homie.
Yeah, he's our boy, so he can talk all the shit he wants, right?
That's exactly right. And the JC says Ward ducked Triple G in Nello, and he did outbox Kovalev. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that. I mean, Andre Ward did outbox Kovalev. We did the controversial rescore. We said that it wasn't a robbery. I think it could have gone either way, but I did have Ward winning that fight. And in that second one, I mean, I do think that it was a low blow, but I mean, Kovalev kind of quit in that fight. And as far as like what was going on with those two back in the day, based on what I remember, yeah, it's like you said, Nopal. Like I think that the both of them were just kind of in their own respective divisions doing their own thing. Like it was kind of talked about, but to me, it seemed like the perception was that Triple G wouldn't be moving up. Like he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't go up to fight Andre Ward. Like he was never quoted as saying that he would. And at the time though, I felt like everybody respected it. Like I don't remember like this call for him to do so. I mean, people were
Yeah,
able to fight in their
Triple G got a
divisions.
pass.
Well, and I think just back in the day, people were more okay with fighters just kind of staying in their respective divisions. Like people didn't call for Floyd Mayweather to stay at 154 when he won titles there. He went back to 147. It was fine. Like there's a lot of examples like that. And Triple G was comfortable at his weight class, and it is what it is. I do think that the timing of Andre Ward coming out and saying this is pretty interesting. Like, I think he's just bitter, bro. Like, he's just commentating. You can see that he loves to show his belts, his Ring Magazine belts in the background. And I get it, and he deserves his respect for sure. I mean, he's very accomplished. He's undefeated. He's got a good resume. He's the Super 6 champion. So
Yeah,
I got a lot of respect for him. But he's also kind of a little bit of a big talker. And, you could tell he hates Canelo, and you can tell he's bitter that he doesn't get the attention that other fighters now are getting. And I bet you in the back of his mind, being the supreme athlete that he is, he's probably a little bit bitter, thinking I might be able to beat these guys. Like, say this dude wanted to come back. Okay. I mean, this would be a way to kind of get his name out there. Like, you kind of indirectly talk shit to Triple G, who, let's be honest, if he wanted to, he could have said something back. He could have said, okay, well, hey, let's settle it in the ring. You're younger than me, huh? Like, let's find out. But Triple G didn't go there. And Ward didn't really say that either, because you can't really say, oh, I'll come back, because then that opens things up, and it's like, if he does that, I mean, he doesn't want that kind of heat, because then the assessments will come out right away. So like you said, Paul, I think he's just kind of barking behind that cage, man. And Triple G, if this fight happened now, I'd have to favor him possibly. Like, I just don't think that Andre Ward could just come back and beat Triple G, but we haven't seen Triple G fight in a really long time either. So it would be an interesting matchup. I mean, I would probably pay pay-per-view for that fight, and I can't think of the last time I'd like paid pay-per-view for like two guys like over, 37, 38 fighting. But I mean, their records are still really good. I mean, Triple G's only got one loss. Andre Ward's undefeated. I mean, you could sell that fight. I mean, and whoever won that fight could possibly be going into a Canelo fight. But then again, why would Triple G want to like risk that? I mean, if he's going to get that payday, you might get a payday with Andre Ward, but it's not going to be anything close to what he would get with Saul Canelo Alvarez.
And Triple G is older than Andre Ward.
Yeah, Andre Ward just turned 38, and I think Triple G, I'll look it up, but he's like 41 or 42.
Oh shit, I didn't know that. I guess when you think of retired fighter, you think of the guy being a little older than that, but yeah, he did retire early, I guess. Yeah, man, I agree. I would pay for that for sure. I'm sorry, go ahead, Chicano.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, dude, I remember back in the day, dude, like, yeah, dude, Ward had plans, man. I remember he wanted to move up to heavyweight. I mean, and I'm not sure if it's because he was injury prone, as he gets older, maybe like his body started breaking down. Yeah, but right now, Triple G is 39, so there's only 1 year that separates them between the two.
Yeah, and they fought in the amateurs basically too, so.
Did they? Do you know how that went?
Well, in that same video, Triple G says that he beat him in the amateurs. So, which is, these guys are just, they're kind of like feuding a little bit, and funny thing about Andre Ward, man, is he wanted to fight Joshua, like you were saying, Chicano, and, they put it out there that, they might possibly be interested in that. And, I'm pretty sure he saw Joshua get taken out by Usyk. And, he probably looks at that and says, that could have been me, but is that all we should expect? I mean, he can still fight Usyk if he wanted to, right? Maybe that's too much to ask, but you know what I mean?
Well, he's still young, and I still consider him to be a supreme athlete. And if he comes back and he fights somebody and that opponent beats Andre Ward, I would give that feller full credit. And I want to give a little shout out to what Kenny has to say here. He says the ref is supposed to protect the fighter in those situations. All right, looks like we're talking about the low blow. We're going to be talking about some referee obligations here in a second. It's time for us to get into our controversial rescore. And, man, I'll tell you what, this was one hell of a thing to get into. Now, I want to talk about this. This was posted on Twitter. A lot of people are kind of recapping Amir Khan's career now that it's seemingly over. 8 wins, 1 robbery loss, 4 defeats. Legendary British warrior. Respect. We're going to get into it, man. Amir Khan versus Lamont Peterson. Now, we don't have the one and only run PMC to break it down, so I'm not going to give you all kinds of crazy information, but I am going to tell you that this was a championship fight. Amir Khan was the WBA, and IBF champion going into this. So you can see Khan has the A-side billing in the banner, but when you look at like the hard banner, the physical one, Peterson has first billing. And there was some controversy going into this fight. There's actually some different dynamics of controversy going on. And one of the things was this dude right here in the circle. And like, I don't know if you guys can see this, but the white dude, that is a judge. And this mysterious guy was sitting next to him during the fight. And I want to play a little clip that kind of summarizes what was going on immediately after. And then we're going to get into the controversial points that were taken as well by the referee. Now let's take a look and see what was going on and why Khan was pissed off immediately after the fight.
Khan, who's cast fresh doubt over his defeat to Lamont Peterson last month. He's alleged that a mystery man may have interfered with the judges' scorecards during the fight. This is what Khan is so angry about. At the beginning of the fight, an unidentified man in a blue shirt and hat is sat down at ringside before being moved by the man with a red tie, WBA supervisor Michael Welsh. He then takes a seat in between Khan's father and Oscar De La Hoya. But look now, round two, the man has moved right next to Welsh, who's in charge of the judges' scorecards. Stayed there for the rest of the fight. Rules state nobody is allowed to speak to judges or commissioners during the fight, but the man in the hat is clearly having some interaction with Welsh at the start of the 6th round. Then a white slip, which Khan claims is a scorecard, is passed down the main judges' panel, appearing to come from the man who is now gesturing to all members of the panel. Again, this would be strictly against the rules. And at the start of round 11, he picks up a yellow slip before discussing something with Welsh. The 3 different judges have 3 different coloured scorecards, which would have been handed to the IBF, WBA and DC.
So pretty scandalous too, and on top of that too, it took 10 minutes for them to read the decision. All right. And on top of that, then we can get into it and how you felt about it. Khan was deducted 2 points for pushing Lamont Peterson. Happened twice. Wasn't given the hard, like, hey, I'm going to warn you, or I'm going to deduct a point from you type warning. And that's the way it played out. So we're going to get into this. George, what are your thoughts about this little controversial segment, man, regarding this dude just hanging out with the judge like this? I mean, did you remember this when you went back and watched it? I mean, do you have any recollection of this?
I did not. I didn't even remember it until you mentioned it earlier before we started. I wish I would have looked into it a little bit more. I didn't know that. It is a little fishy. I mean, I'm playing jokes in my head. He's like probably handing them a phone number, or they're probably drawing stupid sketches to each other. What guys do, we do stupid shit like that sometimes. But I mean, it's if it's the rule, it's the rule, right? I mean, shit. I guess maybe there should have been some more investigation into it. But I mean, shit, dude, it's pretty messed up. Again, if that's the rules, I think, they should have investigated a little bit more. I wish I would have noticed this in the beginning when I watched the fight. Well,
I barely caught it. Like, I rescored this fight and then I was just looking up pictures for slides. And then I saw this circle and I was like, oh yeah. Nopal, do you remember this scandal in particular at the time?
No, I don't.
But, well, if you go back and watch it, man, you can see that this judge, dude, he just has his head down most of the time. And yeah, dude, this other dude just cozies up. Now, there is some information on him. Like, I remember Freddie Roach was piping off after the fight and he was all pissed off about it. And he was saying all kinds of just egregious things about this dude and how he was dirty and all this. And then this guy threatened to sue Freddie Roach. And this guy, according to the IBF, he doesn't have an official role with the IBF, but he was classified as a philanthropist who was helping fighters who were down and out on their luck and kind of basically giving them an influx of cash after their career. So he didn't really have an official title, but I guess he had enough status with the IBF to kind of cozy up, to kind of sit in between Oscar and whoever else was there, and then end up sitting right next to one of the judges. And, one of the disturbing things of, whether this guy was corrupt or not was, like, you can clearly see when you're watching this fight that this judge has like no interest in judging the fight. Like, he's looking down most of the time. Like, there's a lot of actual action going on and he's not looking at it. Pretty disturbing in my opinion. It's like D-Style says here, dude was playing solitaire. Pretty scandalous, man. But we're going to get into the actual fight itself. Yeah. And I got to say, man, like, this was probably like one of the best fights I've watched as far as controversial rescores. Like, this one was actually quite entertaining. So I want to know how you had it, George. What did you think about this fight?
All right. Okay. Again, going back to remembering about this fight, I do remember it, but I didn't remember how it ended. I I don't remember who won, but I just remember it being a really good fight. I do definitely remember it being a really good fight. But before I give scores, I actually had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 swing rounds. So I mean, those swing rounds could have went either way for any one of the guys. It was a good fight. Of course, going into this, Amir Khan with the bigger buzz behind his name, Lamont Peterson. He had a couple close fights that he lost. I think he lost his last fight was against Victor Ortiz. I remember them announcing that or saying it during the broadcast. But Amir Khan started off the way he normally starts off. He starts off quick, fast. So when watching this fight, it was a reminder of just Khan's career, all in this one fight. Of course, a fast start, quick jabs, 1-2s, but very predictable. I've always said this when I went back to watch the Danny Garcia fight. He was very predictable. I think that fight actually ended up happening next after this one because
That's right.
in the fight, you can see Lamont Peterson. He's slowly but surely getting close to landing that counter left hook in between punches, and he kept getting closer and closer. And we know Danny Garcia has a really good left hook, even if he closes his eyes or whatever. He just muscle memory. He just knows where to throw it. It was a good fight, man. It was back and forth again. Like I said, there were 6 swing rounds where it could have went either way. So with that, the swing rounds, it could have went to Peterson, it could have went to Khan. The two points deducted, the 10-8. I didn't really see a hard warning. So like when it happened at the time when it happened, I was like, holy shit, I didn't even see no warning. But then somebody was mentioning like, oh, there was like a small warning, or it wasn't like a hard warning. So I was pretty, I guess that was pretty fucked up, whatever. But my overall score, I had a 7-5 for Peterson. I wouldn't call it a controversy only because of those 6 rounds being swing rounds that it could have went either way. So any given night, it could have easily went to Amir Khan. It could have been a draw, but for me, I had Lamont Peterson. Good fight though, man. It was a good fight overall. I would definitely want to watch this one again. Lamont Peterson, in the rematch tested positive. Of course, I'm sure if you guys, I looked a little, I do remember that when I was looking up some of the links that there was a second fight that was supposed to be made, but Lamont Peterson ended up testing positive. So I don't know if that would have made a difference in this first fight, but this was probably one of his best fights that I think that he showed out here, that he did really well. But again, I didn't have it a controversy. I did have Lamont Peterson winning 7-5.
Excellent. Thank you, George. Lamont Peterson wins this one, according to George, with no controversy. And then Run PMC, he did chime in. He says that he had Peterson also winning a narrow decision. And he says, regarding the point deductions, I believe Khan was given plenty of warnings. And just because the ref didn't tell Khan he was giving him a final or hard warning, I think the deductions were fair. I also don't think Peterson's knockdown the first should have counted because he tripped over the ref's legs. Well, I got to say that I co-sign a lot of that. But before I give my full opinion, I want to hear what Nopal has to say. Nopal, what do you think about this fight, man?
I personally do think it was a robbery because I even though Khan did look very weak in this fight, as strong as Peterson looked with his combinations and all that, I still think that Khan did more work enough to win the fight. And just keep in mind that I didn't even, to be honest, the first round I didn't even count those knockdowns because it looked more like Khan barely touched Peterson and kind of like bum rushed him or something, and he tripped or something. So I didn't even count that, but I did give the first 2 rounds to Khan. I gave him, like I said, round 1, 2. I also gave him round 5, gave him round 6, and then now round 7 I gave that to Peterson, and I think that's when the first deduction, and I did deduct a point from Khan, an extra point because I do think he was fighting kind of dirty. He was pushing off Peterson a lot, you know. he was doing it excessively, and he was also, I believe he was pushing his head down, doing a bunch of other stuff. And then so I also gave him round 9, 10, 11. And then round 12, I scored it a 9-9 round. So I ended up scoring this fight 114, 112.
All right,
For
thank you very much,
Khan.
Nopal. And you would classify this one as a robbery then?
I would, but you guys seem, I think Run PMC and George see it the other way around. So I respect everybody's opinion.
Of course, bro, and we respect yours, man. So I had this fight 112 to 113, and I had the winner being Lamont Peterson, and that's counting the point deduction. So if I had to score it based on what the ref says, I would have had Peterson winning, but I had a lot of swing rounds like George. And so even if you take away those deductions, I would have had enough rounds to possibly give Peterson. So I wouldn't necessarily classify this one as a robbery. As far as the point deductions go, like there were a lot of verbal warnings going on, but I still think there should have been one hard final, like, hey, I'm going to take a point away type thing. But that's only for the first point deduction. The second one in the 12th round, like Khan pushed off twice and then he did it again in that round. Like he should have known, like he tried to do it again. And so like, that's really his fault. And it's like you said, George, like Amir Khan is, I forget the term you used. You didn't say one dimensional, but it was kind of like
Predictable.
Formulaic, predictable. Yeah. He's very predictable in my opinion. Like he's kind of just got one gear and he does what he does. And he did it very well for a very long time. It was nice to see like Khan in his prime, but there were a lot of things that I saw here that made me think that there was no way he was going to beat Kell Brook in their fight. And I actually put some money on Kell Brook. It was plus 100. So even money for Kell Brook by knockout. And here were some of the things I saw. Like, his defense wasn't that great. He was better at being mobile. Like his defense was just being on his back foot. The guy could move like crazy. He also loves to hold, man. The one thing is like that ref was giving Amir Khan all kinds of leeway to hold. You could hear the guy going like, come on, let go, Khan, let go, Khan. The guy would just hold and he would, and Khan would act like it's not his fault. He'd be like, oh, look at this guy, like it's funny, man. Like he would come in and flurry, come in and flurry, but the funny thing is like, I'd actually like to take a look at Amir Khan under Virgil Hunter because like I think he kind of got better at like that kind of come in ambush style. Like I don't know, man. Like I remember the way he kind of came in on Canelo a bit. Like that was pretty impressive. The way you jump in and out, but it's still kind of the same. So as you get older, you can't keep that up. Like, and I'm reminded of the Robert Guerrero versus Victor Ortiz fight. They kind of did what they did best like 10 years ago for like 10 seconds, and then they were just holding each other and they got really ugly. And that's what I thought was going to happen here. Like Amir Khan might be able to show a little bit of that flash, but it wasn't going to last. So the only other thing that you'd have to consider is if Kell Brook gave out first, but he didn't, but to go back to this particular fight, it was very enjoyable. Like I had a good time watching Lamont Peterson. I forgot how much I enjoyed his style. I mean, the corner work was really good too. They were, I love it when a corner is very frank with their fighter about how they need to go out and win rounds. And dude, in the 11th round, like after the 11th round, like you could see I don't know who the trainer is, but he pushed Lamont Peterson's head up like, hey, come on, focus. I'm like, damn, pretty aggressive, like, and I like seeing passion. It was pretty cool.
I remember that. Go ahead,
yeah, man. So I think the Al Chile crew can successfully classify this one as not a robbery, although hell, man, we encourage you all to watch this yourself and have your own opinion because that's what matters really. Does anybody have any final thoughts on this fight before we wrap it up?
No, not really. I mean, I just like one thing I guess I could say about Amir Khan. One of my friends, he was a former fighter. He actually used to train my brother, and we were talking about this the week of the fight. And he's like, man, you know what? You got to really look at it like this. He's like, Khan kind of was like a trailblazer or kind of was a trendsetter for UK fighters. He's like, he was one of the first ones to actually come over to the US to to move to the US, not just to fight in the US, but to live here, to get acclimated to the US. And just his whole career, he just pretty much was pointing out how he promoted himself well. If you look at this last fight, it was on Sky Sports and it was on ESPN, like two really good networks. ESPN, of course, being worldwide, but mainly viewed here in the US, and then Sky Sports is more like the international, boxing network. So I guess at the end of it, I'm assuming this is I'm sure this was probably it for Amir Khan. He had a really good career. There's nothing bad we could say about his career. He fought everybody he could fight. My biggest one that I really wanted to see was of course Mayweather, and Mayweather had the poll between him and Maidana. Khan actually won that poll to fight Mayweather. He ended up choosing Maidana. But again, some of these fights, I'm not saying that I think Khan would have won, but it would have been interesting to see Khan, because he's a little bit better of a boxer from the outside. But eventually, of course, Mayweather computes everything. He takes all the data and he does what he does best. But it would have, for me, I would have really liked to seen that fight.
Yeah, man. As we just kind of close the chapter on Amir Khan, dude, I co-sign all of that, dude. Like, it was entertaining to watch his career, and a lot of these older fighters are starting to retire, and he's not super old, but he's 35, and it was super entertaining seeing him go through the gauntlet. Like, he fought a lot of people. If you look at his resume, it's absolutely stacked. I went to the Amir Khan versus Zab Judah fight. I was kind of a fan of both of them. It just kind of fell on a perfect weekend in which I was going to Vegas, so I made it happen. Put some money on Judah because I loved Judah, so I lost some money. I was a little pissed off about that one. I think I remember thinking like, oh, he hit him low, but I mean, it was probably a clean win. I haven't watched that fight in a while. And then Nando here says, a lot of British fighters fight dirty. The refs over there rarely admonish them or deduct points. Remember how Hatton mauled Costa Tszyu into submission? You know what? I want to go back and look at Ricky Hatton the way he used to hold people, because I've kind of gotten a feel of Andre Ward doing it, and I need to go back and look at the way Hatton did it and see if it's worth breaking up or not. You know what I mean? But yeah, dude, Amir Khan, like, I kind of want to just like, leave this conversation on a positive note for Amir Khan, because he was the man. No, Paul, you got any final thoughts on the career of Amir King Khan?
No, I mean, I agree with what George was saying, that he was pretty famous boxer, and he had some big fights. We should give him credit for taking the big fights. He even fought Canelo.
Hey, bro,
Yeah,
he was winning until he got knocked out, bro.
True, man. True, man. True.
Oh yeah, that's his claim to fame. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that one.
Man, it will not end. Don't worry,
it won't
keep
end.
Going.
Here's the thing,
he
like
went 5 rounds and then got knocked out. According to
right.
them.
Like, you don't hear people saying like, oh, Kell Brook was beating Crawford until he got knocked out. But for some reason, people just love bringing that up. He did win that first round pretty clean. Like, and you know what? The way he went in there and just sacrificed himself, amazing. Like, he just went in there and it wasn't reckless, but I mean, he was really rolling the dice going in there.
Yeah, he was. And we all knew exactly how it was going to turn out. But man, snot and everything flew out of him when he got hit with that shot.
Brutal, man. Nice little highlight KO, and up until then, his record is still pretty good now. Like, he doesn't have that many losses.
No.
So salute to Amir Khan, man. It was a pleasure watching you. And now that we're done with that, dude, we get a chance to talk about which fight we're going to score next. Now, we got some remaining controversial fights here. I've also listed a bonus option. A lot of people think that the first Gonzalez versus Estrada fight was a blatant robbery. That's a more recent blatant robbery. And of course, Chocolatito is fighting next week, so it could be like a relevant fight. So that's the reason I listed it. But otherwise, man, we're narrowing it down, dude. We have Zarate versus Pintor, Pernell Whitaker versus Jose Luis Ramirez. We got one more Sergio Martinez fight, Foreman versus Briggs, 2 Muhammad Ali fights, and I have some that are saved that are coming up. But this is what we got left. So, George, what do you think about this, man? What would you like to do?
Oh, I mean, as long as I'm invited, man. I mean, to me, I have no preference, but I would love to see like the older ones. Of course, we hear of Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, and especially George Foreman. I mean, Shannon Briggs. I really don't remember that fight, but that was definitely in the era that I could have watched it. But so many great names on here. I think the one that sticks out to me would probably be the Pernell Whitaker for some reason, even though I don't remember it. Like, I would love to see a Pernell Whitaker. He's been controversial, right? De La Hoya.
That's
Chavez.
right, man.
So, I mean, this might be another one.
All right, man. Well, let's take a look at it, man. We're going to take a look at Pernell Whitaker versus Jose Luis Ramirez. And then what do you guys think? Should we just do some double duty and take a look at this Gonzalez Estrada one just as a reference? We don't have to necessarily go through it completely, but let's all just take a look at it so we know what we're going into with that fight the next week, and then we can kind of be more prepared to discuss Gonzalez versus Martinez.
Oh, yeah. Sounds good.
Sweet. Nopal, what do you think, man? Does that sound like a plan,
No,
brother?
I like that idea.
Sweet, dude. And Nando says here that, yeah, smooth diminishing Al Canelo 24/7. Man, you already know, Nando. And Hard Time says, how about UK's Josh Warrington headbutting Mauricio Lara in their second fight? Well, okay, I got to go back and look at some British fights. I'm going to take a look at the Hatton fights. I'm going to look at that Hatton versus Costa Zoo fight and see how that one went. But hey, man, for the Al Chile crew, we are out. We appreciate you guys joining us on this primetime special, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.